Let's welcome in John Smoltz, who's done it all. He's started, he's closed, a Hall of Famer, and obviously our colleague here on MLB Network. So, Smoltzy, what are your thoughts here now on now these new rules and how they're going to affect, heading into 2020, some of these decisions that managers are going to use? In particular, you heard Jerry Dipoto and also now Joe Madden thinking about going to that six-man rotation.
Yeah, back to the chalkboard when it comes to strategy and philosophy, because this is going to be something you're going to have to really rethink. This is not 162 games. And even though you might want to use a six-man rotation early on, I think you're more apt to use a four-man rotation later because there won't be a lot of innings logged by your studs. And so once you get into that middle part of the season and you've got a leverage of big three stud starters, it's interesting to me how we use our starters in the postseason at the end of the year when they've tapped out their innings in that way, but we don't use them in a way that might be advantageous for 60 games. I think you're going to see some differences. I think the strategies with the new rules, I'm all in. It's the same for both teams. Anyone who complains about it doesn't understand the same thing happens for both teams with the pitcher rule and the extra inning rule. So it's time to get your creative hat on and to get with it and just roll with it, because baseball is going to be played at an intense level like we've never seen for 60 days for those who can stay disciplined and concentrate, because it's real easy to kind of go the other way if you're not in the mix and say, it's only 60 games, what's the difference? But I think you're going to see some surprise teams come up and really kind of refigure out a philosophy that's going to give them an advantage in a 60-game schedule.
Well, let me ask you a little bit further on that. Is there a team or two that you think this 60-game schedule will benefit?
I do. I mean, the good teams and the great teams are still going to be really great. I just think they have more pressure on them because, let's face it, 162 games, those rosters are going to win out. That's what we did for 14 years. We never really were fazed by our deficit in April or May because we knew we had a lot more months and a lot more games to get there. So getting out of the gate is going to be important. But I think teams like Cincinnati, I think teams that have made a lot of moves to put their roster in the best situation possible, I think they're going to have an opportunity in the Central with the schedule that they're going to play. Look for the Central Division to be the most intriguing because they're going to play the other 20 games against the American League Central, which is a little bit lesser competitive as compared to the other divisions. But I'm excited to see who comes out of the gate and says, heck yeah, we got a chance. Whether it's a young San Diego Padre team that maybe over 162 games with their young pitching didn't have enough. I just think there are going to be some tension and pressure on the big boys to do what they're supposed to do and still maintain, the level of what we expect, whether it's the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Astros and the Washington Nationals and like.
Oh, you even go back to last year. Nats, everyone remembered this. They got off to the slow start, 19-31, but through 60, they were 27-33. That was the third worst record in the National League. Obviously, they knew they had 100 more games to play, so I'm not saying the situation would work out the same way now. But if you get off to a slow start, you're going to be in trouble. Talked to Dan and Carlos earlier about their thoughts about playing without fans in the stands. How would you react to that?
Well, personality is going to come into play with a lot of players. And what I mean by that is those that can concentrate in a vacuum. I had a hard time when a team was losing 100 games. We only had 1,500 to 3,000 fans in Atlanta, and you could hear the lights buzzing. You could hear the vendors. Now, you're not going to hear the vendors and the fans, but you're going to hear things you normally wouldn't hear that you could, let's face it, have a hard time locking in if your mind wanders. So getting on the mound and not really knowing what the scenario is going to be like, I used the buzz, I used the roar, I used a lot of things to my advantage. And now knowing you're going to go back to maybe, high school baseball where you're going to hear the crack of the bat, you're going to hear the ball echoing off the seats. It is going to take a while for certain players to get used to it because not everybody's level of concentration is the same. And I would admit, if I was a younger player in this scenario, I would have a hard time not wandering, thinking about the ball clanking off seats and certain things that make your brain wander. So the 3 weeks in their own stadium is going to help, but it's also going to be very, very intriguing to hear the chatter from each dugout that you're going to hear for the first time ever.